I came to collect my ex-wife's house debt. The foreclosure file in my hand had her address on it. 90 days past due. And I told myself it was just another house, just another debt, just another stranger who fell behind. But when the door of that half-restored Victorian swung open, the woman standing there wasn't a stranger at all. She was Sutton, the wife I'd walked away from 3 years ago, sawdust in her hair, our grandmother's house dying around her, and the same eyes that used to look at me like I was worth something. I was a debt collector sent to take everything she had left. She was the ex-wife who should have begged me for more time, who should have pleaded, who should have cried. But she didn't beg. She crossed her arms, looked me dead in the eye, and said she had a different offer, one that would either save the house I came to seize or finally break what was left of us both. And the moment I heard it, I knew the real debt between us was never about the house at all. My name is Beckett Hale, and I had a rule I never broke. Never read the name on a file before you read the numbers. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't beg. Numbers don't make excuses. People do all three, and I had spent 3 years building a life where I never had to listen to any of it. So when Marcus Whitfield dropped a stack of folders on my desk that gray Tuesday morning, I didn't even look at the names. I looked at the columns. Cedarbrook batch, Marcus said, smiling the way he always did, like the world was a thing he had already bought. He was my boss, regional vice president. The kind of man who measured a person's worth in square feet. Crestmark just swallowed up the little local lender out there. All their bad paper is ours now. There's one property a hotel chain's been sniffing around. Old Victorian, prime spot. If it forecloses clean, we flip it before the holidays. You want me to make sure it forecloses clean, I said. I want you to do your job. And he walked away, whistling. I opened the top file, Burge Hollow Road, Cedarbrook, Vermont. 90 days past due. Borrower, S. Maddox. The name meant nothing to me. Why would it? Maddox was a stranger's name. I drew a small circle around the overdue balance, slid the folder into my bag, and told myself it was just another Tuesday. I had no idea the floor was about to fall out of my whole life. Cedarbrook is the kind of town that doesn't change, and that's exactly why I'd left it. The maples along Main Street were the same burning orange I remembered. The bell on the hardware store door still stuck a half second before it rang. I drove past a workshop I used to know better than my own heartbeat, Eli Granger's place, where I learned to plane a board straight when I was 16, and I slowed down without deciding to. My hands were sweating on the wheel, and I didn't know why yet. Some part of me knew before the rest of me did. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Birch Hollow Road, number 14. And then I saw the house, and my foot came off the gas all on its own. I knew that house. It rose up out of the morning fog, like something out of an old photograph. A tall Victorian with a wraparound porch, scaffolding climbing one side like ivy. Half the porch stripped down to raw, pale wood. It was a house caught in the middle of becoming something, half beautiful, half falling apart. And I knew every crooked board of it, because I had stood on that porch 6 years ago and promised a woman I would love her until the day I died. The folder in my bag suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. No, it was a coincidence. Lots of old houses look the same. I told myself that lie all the way up the gravel drive. I parked. I grabbed the file. My hands were shaking now, and I gripped the folder harder to make them stop. I climbed the porch steps. The third one still groaned, just like it always had, and I knocked. Footsteps inside. Light, quick, certain. The door swung open, and the whole world went silent. She had sawdust in her hair, a paint-stained apron tied at her waist, a streak of white primer along her jaw like a scar made of light. She was older than my memory of her, and somehow more beautiful for it, and for one terrible, endless second, neither of us breathed. Sutton, my wife, my ex-wife, the woman I had walked out on 3 years ago because I was too much of a coward to let her watch me fail. Her face moved through about 6 things at once: shock, hope, hurt, and then, last of all, a wall coming down hard behind her eyes, the gentlest thing in her going cold and careful. "You're with the bank now," she said. Not a question. She was just saying it out loud to make herself believe it. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. My throat had closed like a fist. The file. I finally managed. It said Maddox. I didn't know. Sutton, I swear to you, I didn't know it was you. I went back to my name. She crossed her arms. It wasn't anger. It was armor. After. That one word held our entire divorce inside it. A cold wind came up off the hills and rattled the loose scaffolding, and somewhere behind her, in that gutted, gorgeous house, I could smell fresh-cut pine and old plaster and 100 memories I had spent 3 years trying to drink and work and run myself out of. "Are you here to take the house, Beckett?" she asked. And God help me. I had no answer, because the truth was sitting in a folder in my hand, and the truth was yes. "I'm here to go over your account," I said, holding up the folder like it could shield me from the look on her face. "That's all. That's the only reason." She stared at me for a long moment, reading me the way she used to, and I felt naked, like all my expensive clothes and my expensive title had just dissolved off of me and left only the man she used to know, the one who'd let her down. Then she stepped back from the door. "Then you'd better come in," she said. "I'm not having this conversation on Grandma Pearl's porch." Pearl, of course. That's why I knew the house. It had been her grandmother's. We used to come here for Sunday dinners when we were first married, and old Pearl would press a fork into my hand and tell me the secret to a long marriage was never going to bed angry and always finishing the porch you started. Pearl had been gone 4 years now, and Sutton had taken the house and the debt that came with it and walked into the storm of restoring it completely, totally, devastatingly alone. I stepped inside, and the past reached up and grabbed me by the heart. The kitchen had the original cabinets, sanded down to bare honey-colored wood, a dozen paint swatches taped to the wall like she was trying to decide what color the rest of her life should be. There was a single mug drying by the sink, 1 plate, 1 fork. The arithmetic of a woman living alone in a house built for a family that never came. She made coffee without asking if I wanted any. Poured 2 cups, set one in front of me, black, no sugar, the exact way I take it. She didn't even notice she'd done it, but I noticed. I noticed so hard it hurt to breathe. "So," she said, sitting across from me, wrapping her hands around her own mug, "tell me how you're going to take my house." "Sutton, numbers, Beckett. You were always good with numbers. Give me the numbers." So I did, because numbers were the only solid ground I had left. The line of credit is 90 days delinquent. Once an account passes 90 days, the bank's options narrow fast. Without a payment plan in place within 30 days, foreclosure proceedings begin automatically. That's not me. That's the policy. That's always the answer, isn't it? Her voice was quiet. It's never you. It's the policy. It's the business. It's the dream you had to chase. It's never you who chooses to walk away. That landed like a slap, because it was true, and we both knew it was true. And the worst part was, she didn't even say it cruelly. She said it tired, like an old fact she'd made peace with a long time ago. "I know what foreclosure means," she went on, before I could find a single word to defend 3 years of my cowardice. "It means a hotel company puts plastic shutters on my grandmother's house and calls it Vermont Charm. It means everything she was, everything I've poured into this place, gets bulldozed into a brochure." I hadn't told her about the hotel chain. I hadn't said a word about Marcus, or the deal, or any of it. She just knew. Cedarbrook never needed a newspaper. The walls themselves gossip in a town like that. "Then what's your plan?" I asked. "Because if you've got nothing, Sutton, I can't stop what's already moving." And that's when she pulled the binder out of the drawer. She'd been waiting for that question. She slid it across the table, and I opened it, and what I saw made my banker's brain sit up straight. It wasn't the desperate scribbling of a woman drowning. It was a business plan, a real one. Pre-bookings already coming in for the Harvest Festival weekend. A folder of emails from regional newspapers asking to feature the opening. A 5-year revenue model that was, and this physically annoyed me, better organized than half the loan applications that crossed my desk back in the city from men in suits asking for millions. "Pearl's Hollow Inn," she said. "That's what it's going to be. 8 rooms. Open by the Harvest Festival. The whole town's already talking about it. I am 90 days, from making it real, Beckett. 90 days. And you've come to bury it 90 days too soon. I closed the binder slowly. Sutton, this is good. This is really good. But good isn't a payment. The bank doesn't accept potential. It accepts money, and you don't have it. No, she said. I don't have the money. So I'm not going to give you money. She leaned forward, and the cold armor in her eyes cracked just enough to show me the fire underneath it. I'm going to give you a different offer. The room seemed to tilt. Outside, a cloud moved off the sun, and light poured through the bare kitchen window and lit up the sawdust floating in the air between us, like the whole moment had been holding its breath. I'm proposing a workout, she said. I know the bank can do them. You restructure the debt instead of foreclosing. Convert part of what I owe into a stake in the inn. The bank becomes a partner instead of a vulture. 90 days, straight through to the festival opening. If I fail, you get the house, free and clear. No fight from me, no tears, no lawyers. I'll hand you the keys myself. And if it works, then everybody wins, including Crestmark, including you. I should have said no. I should have said the bank would never go for a restructuring on a residential conversion this risky. The Marcus had already promised the property to the hotel chain, that the smart financial move, the cold, correct, numbers only move, was to let it fall and walk away clean. I should have said all of that, but she wasn't finished. There's one more piece, she said, and now her voice dropped, and her hands tightened around her coffee mug until her knuckles went white, and I realized she was about to say something that cost her everything to say. The bank requires an assigned officer to oversee any restructuring. Someone has to administer the workout. Someone has to be here, on site, making sure the renovation stays on budget and the business plan holds. She lifted her eyes to mine, and in them I saw 3 years of pain and pride and a stubbornness I had never been able to match. And I wanted to be you. The clock on the wall ticked. Once, twice. You want me to stay here? I said slowly, not sure I'd heard it right. In Cedarbrook, working on this house, with you. I want the man who walked out of this house to be the one who helps me save it. Her jaw was trembling now, just slightly, the only crack in the whole performance. Call it whatever you want. Call it business. The bank needs an officer. You're already here. You already know the house. You drove all this way, Beckett. She took a breath that shook on the way in. So either you take everything I have left and you flip it to strangers, or you stay and you finish the porch you started. The porch you started. Pearl's words, out of Sutton's mouth, and I knew in that instant she had said them on purpose, that she had aimed them straight at the softest, most broken part of me, and that she had hit it dead center. My eyes were burning. I looked down at the table so she wouldn't see. 3 years ago, I had taken a loan against this kind of house, not this one, but the dream of one, and I had poured it into a business of my own, because I was a man in a hurry, and someday wasn't fast enough for me. I wanted to give her the inn now. I wanted to be the husband who'd already won, and the business failed, and the shame of it ate me alive, and instead of turning to her, I turned away. I got quiet. I got cold. I let her watch me drown, rather than let her see me ask for help. And one gray morning, just like this one, I packed a bag and told her she'd be better off without a man who couldn't keep a single promise he made. I told myself I was setting her free. The truth is I was running. The truth is I was a coward. And the truth, sitting in that kitchen with a coffee she'd made exactly the way I like it, was that I had never, not for one single day in 3 years, stopped loving her. Why? I asked, and my voice came out cracked and small, nothing like the man in the expensive suit who'd knocked on her door an hour ago. After everything I did, Sutton, why would you want me anywhere near this house? Near you? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that broke me clean in half. Because Pearl built this house with a man who almost left her too, she said softly. And he didn't. He stayed and he finished the porch. And she used to tell me that the strongest thing on earth isn't 2 people who never fell. It's 2 people who fell and found their way back up and chose each other again anyway. Her eyes were wet now. Finally, the tears she had refused to spend begging me. I'm not offering you a job, Beckett. I already know I can lose this house. What I can't stand to lose." She stopped, pressed her lips together, shook her head. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. And right there, in that gutted kitchen that smelled of pine and primer and the ghost of Sunday dinners, with the foreclosure file going cold in my bag and my whole careful, numbers-only life cracking open like an egg, I understood the thing the title of my own story had been trying to tell me from the very first knock on that door. I came to Cedarbrook to collect my ex-wife's house debt, but the real debt, the one I'd been running from for 3 years, the one no bank could put a number on, the one that had been quietly compounding in my chest every single lonely night since I drove away, that debt had nothing to do with the house at all. I opened my mouth to answer her, and outside, gravel crunched under tires. A car was coming up the drive, a sleek black car that did not belong in Cedarbrook. Sutton's face went pale. "That's not the bank," I said, standing up fast, my heart slamming. "Sutton, who is that?" She rose slowly, looking out the window, and when she turned back to me, her voice was barely a whisper. "That," she said, "is the man you really work for, and he's 3 weeks early." The car door opened, and Marcus Whitfield stepped out onto Pearl's gravel drive, smiling up at the house like a man looking at something he already owned. Marcus Whitfield climbed the porch steps like he was inspecting a property he'd already bought, and the third step groaned under his polished shoes the same way it had groaned under mine. "Beckett," he said, all teeth. "There you are. I was in the neighborhood, figured I'd see this little project of yours with my own eyes." His gaze slid past me to Sutton, then up the bones of the house, pricing every board. "And this must be the borrower." "Maddox," Sutton said. She put out her hand. Her voice was steel, but I had known her long enough to feel her pulse hammering behind it. "Sutton Maddox. It's my grandmother's house." "Was your grandmother's house?" Marcus said gently, and somehow the gentleness was the cruelest part. He shook her hand and let it go too fast. "I'm sorry to be blunt, Miss Maddox, but I drove a long way, so I'll save us both the dance. This property is 90 days delinquent. We have a buyer ready to pay cash. The kind thing, the honest thing, is to let it go now, before you pour any more of your life into a wall that's already coming down." I watched the words hit her. I watched her not flinch. "I made an offer to your officer this morning," she said. "A restructuring, a workout, 90 days. Marcus turned to me, and his smile thinned at the edges. "Did you now?" This was the moment. I could feel it the way you feel the floor go soft before you fall. Marcus was waiting. Sutton was waiting. The whole house seemed to lean in around me, every board Pearl ever nailed holding its breath. And the cold, smart, numbers-only man I'd spent 3 years becoming opened his mouth to say, "No, of course not. The property forecloses clean." But that man didn't speak. The other one did. The one who'd grown up in this town. The one who'd learned to plane a board straight in Eli Granger's workshop. The one who'd promised a girl forever on this exact porch. "It's a good plan, Marcus," I heard myself say. I reviewed the numbers. Pre-bookings, regional press, a 5-year model that beats the cash sale by a wide margin. A 90-day workout isn't charity. It's the better return for the bank. I'd recommend it for any borrower. I made myself meet his eyes. I want to administer it personally. The silence stretched so long I could hear the wind in the scaffolding. Marcus studied me. He was a man who'd built a career on reading people, and I could see him reading me now, clocking the way I stood a little too straight, the way I hadn't once looked at Sutton, which of course told him everything. 90 days, he said at last, soft as a closing door. "All right, Beckett. You've got your 90 days. He started back down the steps, then paused, not turning around. But the buyer stays warm. And if this house isn't generating real revenue by the festival, if there's one weak number, one missed mark, it goes to them. No extensions. No favors." Now he did turn, and his eyes were flat. "And Beckett, don't get comfortable out here. You've got a career back in the city. Don't trade it for a porch." The black car pulled away down the drive, and the dust settled, and Sutton and I stood alone on the porch in the cold, bright morning. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "Yes," I said. "I did." And for the first time in 3 years, She looked at me. Really looked at me. Like, maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the man who'd left. I went to find a place to stay that night, and that's how I ended up back on Eli Granger's doorstep. He opened the door before I knocked, like he'd been expecting me for 3 years. Knew you'd come back someday, Eli said. He was older now, his beard gone fully white, sawdust still living in the creases of his flannel like it always had. Didn't think it'd take a bank to drag you home. He stepped aside. Guest house is yours. It's been yours since you were 16 and didn't know it. That night, I sat at Eli's kitchen table and went through Sutton's binder again, slowly, the way I'd review a stranger's loan. And the more I read, the more my chest ached because it was good. She'd done it all alone. Every number, every projection, every desperate, hopeful, brilliant page alone, in a gutted house, eating off one plate. She did all this herself, I said. Eli didn't look up from the chair leg he was sending. Girl never asked a soul for help. Not once. You know where she gets that? He glanced at me. Same place you get yours, son. The two of you would rather drown standing up than be seen needing a hand. Always were two of a kind. That was your blessing. The sandpaper paused. And it was your curse. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I showed up at Birch Hollow Road in old jeans and a flannel shirt instead of a suit, and I picked up a hammer instead of a clipboard. Sutton stared at me from the top of a ladder, paintbrush frozen in her hand. What are you doing? You don't have a budget for a crew, I said, rolling up my sleeves. And the bank's officer has a vested interest in this renovation finishing on time. So, I picked up a crowbar and nodded at the rotted porch boards we'd promised each other we'd replace 6 years ago and never had. Where do you want me? She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me for a long moment, something soft and frightened moving across her face. Then she climbed down the ladder, handed me a pencil and a level, and said, "Don't mess it up." And that was the beginning of the best 3 weeks of my life. I want you to understand what those days were like, because they're the heart of everything. We worked from sunrise to dark. We stripped 100 years of wallpaper and found, underneath, a wall where a little Pearl Maddox had once drawn her height in crayon, year after year, climbing up the doorframe. Sutton pressed her hand flat against those faded crayon lines and cried, and I didn't say anything wise or careful. I just stood beside her until she was done. That's all she'd ever needed from me. I was 3 years too late learning it. The smell of the place changed as we worked old rot, giving way to fresh pine, primer, lemon oil, wood smoke from the stove we got working again. My hands, soft from years of keyboards, split open and bled and then hardened into something useful. Every night I fell asleep, aching in a way that felt, for the first time in 3 years, like being alive instead of just surviving. Daphne Calloway, who ran the cafe in town and had loud opinions about everything, started leaving extra muffins for the renovation crew, which we both knew were just for us. Two of a kind, she'd mutter, watching us work, echoing Eli without knowing it. Stubborn as a pair of old mules. Somebody better hammer some sense into both of you before that festival. And slowly, board by board, the old life crept back in, sideways. Sutton handing me coffee before I asked. Me reaching for the tool she needed before she said its name. The way we'd both reach for the same rag and freeze, fingers an inch apart, and then laugh it off too quickly. One evening, exhausted, we sat on the half-finished porch, eating Daphne's leftover pie straight from the tin with 2 forks, watching the sun go down red behind the hills, and Sutton said, almost to herself, I forgot what it felt like to not do this alone. I almost told her everything right then. The 3 years, the empty apartment, the nights I'd driven past our old life like a ghost, the fact that I'd never once stopped loving her. But I was still a coward in the places that mattered most, so I just said, me too, and let the sunset say the rest. We never talked about the wedding photo still hanging in the hallway. She hadn't taken it down. I didn't ask why. Some hopes are too fragile to say out loud. Then came the day everything cracked. It was a small thing. It's always a small thing. I'd left my laptop open on the kitchen table while I went to fix a window upstairs, and Sutton came in looking for a contractor's invoice. She wasn't snooping. She just glanced at the screen, and there, open, was an email thread from Marcus. Keep Meridian warm. The Maddox property is the crown jewel of the package boutique inn potential prime lot. If the workout underperforms even slightly, we foreclose and deliver. Make sure Hale understands the buyer is the priority, not the borrower. By the time I came back downstairs, the wall was back up behind her eyes, higher and colder than the day I'd knocked on her door. Was any of this real? She asked. She held the laptop out like it had burned her. Or were you just keeping me busy, managing me, babysitting the borrower until the bank's real plan was ready? Sutton, don't. Her voice shook. I let you back in this house. I let you back. She stopped, pressed her lips together. Just tell me the truth for once in your life, Beckett. Are you here for me, or are you here for them? And there it was, the exact question, the one that had ended our marriage 3 years ago in different words, on this same floor, whether I was choosing her or just choosing not to fail in front of her. Back then, I'd had no answer. Back then, I'd packed a bag rather than face it. But I wasn't that man anymore. These 3 weeks had sanded that man down to something underneath, something truer. I told Marcus I wouldn't recommend foreclosure, I said. I put it on record before I knew if any of this would work, before I knew if it would save me a thing. I took a breath, and I let her see all of me, the failure and the fear and the love I'd buried for 3 years. You want the truth? Here it is. I didn't take this case for the bank. I took it the second I saw your face in that doorway and realized God or fate or dumb luck had handed me the one thing I never thought I'd get, a second chance, to finish what I started. Not the porch, Sutton. My voice broke. You. To finish what I started with you. She stared at me, tears standing in her eyes, not falling. You don't get to say that, she whispered. You don't get to leave for 3 years and walk back in and say that. I know, I said. I know I don't. So I'm not going to ask you to believe me. I gestured at the house, the raw boards, the crayon wall, the photo in the hallway. I'm going to show you. Every board, every nail, every day until the festival. And if you still want me to leave when it's over, I'll go, and I'll never come back. But I'm done telling you it's the bank, or the business, or the policy. It was always me. The leaving was me. And the staying, that's me too. I choose it. I choose you. I should have said that 3 years ago, and I'll say it every day for the rest of my life, if you let me. For a long, long moment, the only sound was the wind in the scaffolding. Then Sutton set the laptop down on the table, slowly. And she didn't tell me to leave. Finish the window, she said, her voice thick. It's getting cold. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a door left open a crack. And after 3 years of locked doors, a crack was enough to build a whole life through. That night on the porch, with the first hard frost of the season silvering the grass and our breath clouding white in the dark, we sat closer than we had in years. The space between our hands kept shrinking. Once, twice, our fingers brushed, and neither of us pulled away. I turned to her. She turned to me. The whole world narrowed down to the few cold inches between us, and I could see in her eyes that she wanted it as badly as I did, all the years and all the hurt rising up to meet in one. A car horn blared down on the road, some teenager racing past with the windows down, and the spell shattered. We both jumped, and then we both laughed, breathless and shaky and a little relieved, and the moment passed. But it had been there. We'd both felt it, and that was enough to carry me home to Eli's guest house floating 6 inches off the ground. I should have known the universe wasn't done testing us. 2 days before the festival, the storm came. Eli had been muttering about it all week, watching the sky the way old craftsmen do, and he was right. It rolled in off the mountains that night, like the end of the world. Rain coming sideways, thunder shaking the windows in their fresh painted frames. I was at Eli's when my phone rang, and Sutton's voice came through cracked with panic over the roar of the water. Beckett, the basement, it's flooding. Everything's down there. All the new lumber, the furnace, I'm coming, I said, already grabbing my boots. Don't go down there alone. Sutton, do you hear me? Don't you dare do this alone. I drove through the storm with my heart in my throat, the wipers useless, the road a black river. And the whole way there, one thought hammered through me, louder than the thunder. Not this house, not her, not when we've come this far. Please, not now. I skidded into the drive. The house was a black shape against the lightning, water pouring off the new porch we'd built with our own hands. And through the window I could see a single flashlight beam bobbing down in the flooding dark of the basement. She'd gone down anyway. Of course she had. Two of a kind. I threw open the door and ran into the storm and the rising water, shouting her name into the dark, with no idea that what was about to happen in that flooded basement would either finally break us for good or save us both. The basement was already ankle deep when I came down the stairs, the flashlight beam swinging wild across black water that climbed higher with every breath. Sutton was waist deep in it, hauling sheets of new lumber up onto the old workbench, soaked to the bone, shaking, refusing to stop. "Sutton!" I shouted over the roar. "Leave it! It's just wood!" "It's not just wood!" she screamed back, and her voice cracked open on the word, 3 years of holding everything alone, finally tearing loose. "Nothing in this house is just anything, Beckett. It's all I have left. It's all I—" The lumber slipped from her arms and crashed back into the water, and she went down with it, and I crossed that basement faster than I've ever moved in my life and caught her before she hit, both of us going to our knees in the freezing flood, holding on to each other like the water was trying to take us too. And then she stopped fighting the wood, and she started crying. Not the careful, refused tears she'd held back since the day I knocked on her door. The real ones, the ones from the bottom. She pressed her face into my shoulder in that flooded, freezing dark, and she sobbed like something had finally given way. And I held her, and I didn't try to fix it, or save the lumber, or be smart, or be strong. I just held on. "I'm so tired," she wept. "I'm so tired of doing all of it alone." "I know," I said into her wet hair. "I know. You don't have to anymore. I've got you. I've got you, Sutton. I swear to God, I've got you." We sat there on the bottom stair, half in the water, the storm screaming outside, and for the first time we said the things we should have said 3 years ago. "I should have asked you for help," she said. "When Pearl died, when the money got bad. I let you carry me and I never once carried you, because I thought needing you meant I was weak." "No," I said. "Don't you do that. The wall was mine, Sutton. When my business failed, I was so ashamed I made it impossible for you to get close enough to help. You didn't push me out. I locked you out. And then I blamed the lock." My voice broke. "I left because I couldn't stand for you to watch me fail. And the failing leaving you, that was the only real failure of my whole life." "We were both so proud," she whispered. "Both so sure that asking for help meant we'd already lost." She lifted her head. Her face was streaked with tears and floodwater and 100 years of Pearl's dust, and she had never, in all the years I'd known her, been more beautiful. "I'm not too proud anymore," she said. "Not about this, not about you." And then, in a flooded basement in the middle of the worst storm Cedarbrook had seen in a decade, with everything we'd built dissolving in the dark around us, my ex-wife kissed me. And it wasn't goodbye. It was hello. It was finally. It was 3 years of unsaid sentences landing all at once, soft and certain and home. By the time the rest of the town arrived, and they did arrive, Eli with a sump pump, and Daphne with thermoses, and a dozen neighbors with sandbags, the whole of Cedarbrook pouring up Birch Hollow Road through the rain, because that's what towns like that do. Sutton and I were already standing shoulder to shoulder against the water, no longer 2 stubborn people drowning alone, but 2 people who'd finally learned to be saved. We saved the house that night, all of us, together. And somewhere, in the chaos of pumps and sandbags and shouting and laughter, I caught Eli watching me from across the basement, leaning on his pump, and the old man just nodded once, slow, like a craftsman looking at a joint that had finally, after years, pulled true. But the storm wasn't the last test, because the next morning, while Sutton and the town dried out the inn, I drove 2 hours to the city in my old flannel shirt, walked into a glass tower in clothes that didn't belong there, and stood in front of the Crestmark Loan Committee to fight for her house, with Marcus Whitfield sitting at the head of the table, ready to bury it. The smart move is the cash sale, Marcus told the board, not even looking at me. Meridian's offer is clean and immediate. Mister, Hale has spent 90 days playing carpenter in a town he grew up in. I think we can all see his judgment is compromised. Every eye turned to me. And here's the thing, 3 years ago, that sentence would have destroyed me. Compromised. The fear of looking like a failure in a room full of powerful men was the exact fear that made me run from Sutton in the first place. But I wasn't running anymore. I didn't talk about Pearl. I didn't talk about the crayon wall, or the storm, or the woman I loved. I opened the binder Sutton had built alone in a gutted house, and I gave them numbers. Cold, clean, undeniable numbers. Pearl's Hollow Inn is fully booked for the festival weekend, I said. Booked beyond projection. We have confirmed the regional press worth more than any ad budget this bank could buy. The 5-year revenue model outperforms the one-time cash sale by a 40% margin. I looked around the table, meeting every eye, steady. This isn't sentiment. This is the better return on the bank's money. I'd recommend it for any borrower in this country, and I'd stake my career on it. I let that sit. I am staking my career on it. Marcus's jaw tightened. And if it fails, then I was wrong about the numbers, I said. But I've never been wrong about numbers in my life, Marcus. You hired me for exactly that reason. The oldest member of the board, a woman who'd been doing this since before square footage replaced good sense, closed the binder slowly and looked at me over her glasses. Mr. Hale, she said, in 20 years I have watched 100 officers come in here and lie to my face about a property. I have never once watched one offer to put his own career on the table for the truth. She turned to the others. I call a vote. They approved of the workout. On its merits. Marcus didn't say a word as I left. He didn't have to. I'd traded his approval for my own spine, and walking out of that glass tower into the cold, bright afternoon, I'd never breathed easier in my life. The Harvest Festival came 3 days later, gold and crisp and perfect, the whole valley blazing orange, and Pearl's Hollow Inn opened its doors to a full house. There was a brass plaque by the entrance with Pearl's name on it. Daphne ran a cider stand on the lawn that sold out by noon. Eli sat in a rocking chair on the porch we'd rebuilt with our own 4 hands, looking more pleased with himself than any man has a right to. Children ran across the grass where Pearl had once measured her own height in crayon. The crayon wall, we'd kept framed it in glass right there in the front hall, so every guest who ever stayed would know a little girl had grown up loved inside those walls. And that evening, after the last guest had checked in, and the last festival light had flickered on against the deepening blue, I found Sutton alone in Pearl's garden, the one she'd kept exactly the way her grandmother left it. I came here to collect a debt, I said. Do you remember? She turned, and she smiled. And the cold armor I'd seen in that doorway 90 days ago was gone. All of it, melted clean away. I remember, she said. I gave you a different offer instead. You did. I took her hands. They were rough now, like mine, builder's hands, and I loved them more than anything I had ever touched in my life. And I finally figured out the thing I was too stupid to understand the day I knocked on that door. The debt I came to collect was never about the house, Sutton. It was the 3 years I owed you an apology. And the rest of my life I'm hoping you'll let me spend paying you back. I got down on one knee in Pearl's garden, in the grass where a little girl once grew up loved. I'm not leaving this time. Not for a job, not for pride, not for fear, not for anything. I finished the porch. Now let me finish the rest of it with you. Marry me again, Sutton. Be my second chance, and let me be yours. She was crying. So was I. So, I'd later learn, was half the town, watching from the windows of the inn we'd saved together. Yes, she whispered. Yes, you stubborn, impossible man. Yes. And above us, the last of the festival lights came on against the dark, and the old Victorian glowed warm and full and alive. Every window lit, every room full of people, the house that had been dying 90 days ago, now more alive than it had ever been. Pearl was right, all those years ago. The strongest thing on earth isn't two people who never fell. It's two people who fell and found their way back up and chose each other again anyway. They remarried the following June, on that same porch, in front of the whole town. Beckett never went back to the city. Crestmark, as it turned out, was glad to have a Cedarbrook branch officer who actually knew the people whose loans he held. Pearl's Hollow Inn stayed booked through the next spring, and the one after that. And in the front hall, beside the framed crayon wall, they hung two photographs. The wedding from 6 years ago, and the wedding from this one. Same porch. Same two people. Two of a kind, who almost lost it all, and didn't. So, let me leave you with one question tonight, before you go. We all carry a debt we've never paid, a person we walked away from, an apology we were too proud to say, a door we let close because asking to reopen it felt too much like admitting we were wrong. Beckett got a second chance to knock on that door. Most of us never think we will. So here's what I want you to ask yourself. If the one person you walked away from opened the door tomorrow, would you have the courage to stay and finish the porch? Or would you run again? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading every single one.